In October 1943, 9 months after Nikola Tesla's death, something strange allegedly happened at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. A U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Eldridge, was reportedly subjected to a secret experiment designed to make it invisible to enemy radar. But according to witnesses who came forward decades later, something went terribly wrong. The ship did not just disappear from radar, it vanished completely, reappeared miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, then returned to Philadelphia seconds later. Crew members were allegedly found fused into the ship's metal hull. Others went insane. Some claimed they had traveled through time. And at the center of this story, whispered in conspiracy circles for decades, is Nikola Tesla. They say the experiment used his notes on electromagnetic fields and unified field theory. They say he warned it was too dangerous. They say he died trying to stop it. But did the Philadelphia experiment actually happen? And if it did, what does Tesla have to do with it? The Philadelphia experiment is one of the most famous conspiracy theories in American military history. The story goes like this. During World War II, the U.S. Navy was desperate to protect its ships from German U-boats. Submarines were sinking Allied vessels at an alarming rate, and conventional defenses were not enough. So the Navy supposedly turned to experimental physics, specifically electromagnetic field manipulation, to find a solution. The goal, according to the legend, was to create a ship that could become invisible to enemy radar. If successful, American destroyers could move undetected through hostile waters, delivering troops and supplies without being targeted. The experiment allegedly took place in October 1943 at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. The ship chosen for the test was the USS Eldridge, a Cannon-class destroyer escort. Massive generators were installed on board, along with coils and equipment designed to generate an intense electromagnetic field around the vessel. When the experiment began, the story claims, something unexpected happened. The ship became surrounded by a greenish fog. Then, it vanished, not just from radar, but from visible sight. Witnesses on shore reportedly saw the ship disappear, only to reappear moments later, hundreds of miles away at the Norfolk Naval Base in Virginia. Then, just as suddenly, it returned to Philadelphia. But the crew was not unharmed. Some sailors were allegedly found embedded in the metal structure of the ship itself, their bodies fused with steel bulkheads and decks. Others had gone insane, babbling about seeing things no human should see. A few reportedly vanished entirely and were never found. The Navy, according to the legend, immediately shut down the project, classified all records, and denied the experiment ever took place. And that is where Nikola Tesla enters the story. Conspiracy theorists point to several coincidences that link Tesla to the Philadelphia experiment. First, the timing. Tesla died on January 7, 1943. The alleged experiment took place in October of the same year, less than 10 months later. Proponents of the theory suggest that Tesla had been working on the theoretical foundations for the project before his death, but that he warned against actually conducting the experiment because it was too dangerous. Second, Tesla's known work on electromagnetic fields. Tesla spent decades experimenting with high-voltage, high-frequency electrical systems. He understood resonance, standing waves, and how electromagnetic fields interact with matter. To believers, this makes him a logical candidate to have contributed to invisibility research. Third, the mysterious seizure of Tesla's papers after his death. As we covered in an earlier episode, government agents secured Tesla's belongings within hours of his passing. Conspiracy theorists claim that among those papers were notes on unified field theory and electromagnetic shielding, the very concepts supposedly used in the Philadelphia experiment. Some versions of the story go further, claiming that Tesla was directly involved in early planning for the project, but withdrew when he realized the risks. According to these accounts, The Navy proceeded without him after his death, ignoring his warnings, which led to the catastrophic results. But here is the problem. There is no credible evidence that Tesla ever worked on invisibility technology, radar cloaking, or anything resembling the Philadelphia experiment. And as we will see, the entire story has serious issues when examined closely. The Philadelphia experiment legend did not appear in 1943. It emerged more than a decade later, in a very strange way. In 1955, a man named Morris K. Jessup, an amateur astronomer and UFO researcher, published a book called The Case for the UFO. The book speculated about extraterrestrial technology and advanced physics. Shortly after publication, Jessup received a series of bizarre letters from someone calling himself Carlos Miguel Allende, also known as Carl Allen. Allende claimed to have witnessed the Philadelphia experiment firsthand while serving on a nearby merchant ship. He described the disappearing destroyer, the injured crew, and the electromagnetic effects in vivid, rambling detail. Allende's letters were strange. They were written in a disjointed style, with odd capitalization, underlining, and marginal notes. He provided no verifiable details, no ship names other than the USS Eldridge, no specific dates, no other witnesses. He claimed to have evidence, but never produced any. Jessup was intrigued. He began investigating, but he could not find any corroboration. The Navy had no record of such an experiment. None of the supposed witnesses could be located. Allende himself was elusive, refusing to provide documentation or meet in person. Then, in 1959, Morris Jessup died under circumstances that conspiracy theorists found suspicious. His death was ruled a suicide, carbon monoxide poisoning in a parked car. But because Jessup had been investigating government secrets, some people claimed he was silenced. From there, the story grew. The letters were reprinted. Books were written. The Philadelphia experiment became a fixture in conspiracy literature, Cold War paranoia, and later, science fiction. A movie was made in 1984, further popularizing the legend. But the original source remains a single unreliable witness whose identity and credibility have never been confirmed. When historians and researchers began investigating the Philadelphia experiment seriously, they found numerous problems. First, ship records. The USS Eldridge was commissioned in August 1943. Naval logs show that in October 1943, the alleged time of the experiment, the Eldridge was not in Philadelphia. It was in the Bahamas, conducting sea trials and shakedown cruises. It did not arrive at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard until later in the year. Second, the Norfolk teleportation claim. For a ship to physically vanish from Philadelphia and reappear in Norfolk, Virginia, it would have to travel roughly 300 miles instantaneously. There is no mechanism in known physics that could achieve this. Even hypothetical concepts like wormholes or quantum teleportation do not work this way for macroscopic objects. Third, crew testimony. If dozens of sailors had been killed, injured, or driven insane during a naval experiment, there would be records, medical reports, death certificates, pension claims, family inquiries. Yet no such documentation has ever surfaced. No families have come forward. No veterans have confirmed the story. Fourth, the invisibility technology. Making a ship invisible to radar is not the same as making it invisible to the human eye. Radar invisibility involves reducing the ship's radar cross-section, using materials and shapes that deflect or absorb radio waves. This is real technology. Stealth ships and aircraft use it today. But it does not involve massive electromagnetic fields, and it certainly does not cause physical teleportation or time travel. Fifth, the degaussing explanation. During World War II, the Navy did conduct experiments with electromagnetic fields, but for a completely different reason: degaussing. German mines were triggered by the magnetic signature of steel ships. To counter this, the Navy wrapped ships in electrical cables and ran current through them to neutralize the magnetic field. This process was real, well documented, and had nothing to do with invisibility or teleportation. So, the Philadelphia experiment, as described, does not hold up to scrutiny. Given that the Philadelphia experiment probably never happened, why is Nikola Tesla's name attached to it? The answer lies in how conspiracy theories work. They require a plausible genius, a tragic death, missing documents, and an atmosphere of secrecy. Tesla provides all of these. First, Tesla's reputation. By the time the Philadelphia experiment legend emerged in the 1950s, Tesla was already being mythologized as a suppressed genius whose inventions were stolen or hidden. Attaching his name to any secret government project gave it instant credibility. Second, the timing of his death. Tesla died in January 1943, the same year the alleged experiment took place. This created a narrative hook. What if the Navy used his notes after he died? What if he tried to stop them? Third, the seizure of his papers. The fact that government agents took control of Tesla's belongings after his death is well documented. Conspiracy theorists interpreted this as evidence that his work was too dangerous or too valuable to be released. They assumed his papers contained secrets, including, perhaps, the keys to electromagnetic invisibility. Fourth, Tesla's actual work with electromagnetic fields. Tesla did experiment with high-frequency currents, wireless energy, and resonance. To someone unfamiliar with the technical details, it is easy to imagine that this work could be weaponized or used for invisibility. The leap from Tesla coil to teleportation device seems small if you do not understand the physics. But here is the truth. There is no evidence Tesla ever worked on anything resembling the Philadelphia experiment. His research focused on power transmission, lighting, and communication, not military applications involving invisibility or teleportation. The Tesla connection is a myth built on top of another myth. While the Philadelphia experiment as described is fiction, the U.S. Navy was conducting real, classified research during World War II that might have inspired the legend. First, degaussing, as mentioned earlier. Ships were wrapped in electrical cables to neutralize their magnetic signatures, protecting them from magnetic mines. This was not secret. It was a standard defensive measure by the middle of the war. But to an outsider unfamiliar with the technology, seeing cables and electrical equipment being installed on warships might have looked mysterious. Second, radar research. The Navy was heavily invested in radar development during the war. Early radar systems were experimental, and their capabilities were classified. It is possible that someone misunderstood radar testing or radar countermeasures and interpreted it as invisibility research. Third, sonar and underwater acoustics. Submarines and anti-submarine warfare involved a lot of secretive technology. Again, to someone without technical knowledge, these experiments might have seemed like exotic physics rather than conventional engineering. Fourth, psychological operations and disinformation. During wartime, militaries sometimes spread false rumors to confuse enemy intelligence. It is possible, though purely speculative, that someone involved in disinformation heard a fake story designed to mislead spies and mistakenly believed it was real. None of these explanations involve teleportation, time travel, or anything supernatural. But they do provide a context in which rumors could start and grow. Let us return to Carlos Allende, the man who started it all. Researchers who have investigated Allende's background found a troubled individual with a history of fabrication. He later admitted, in some accounts, that parts of his story were exaggerated or invented. But by then, the legend had taken on a life of its own. Allende's letters contained no verifiable facts. He claimed to have witnessed the event, but could not provide the name of the ship he was allegedly serving on at the time. He could not name other witnesses. He could not produce any physical evidence. No photographs, no documents, no official records. When pressed, he became evasive. In later years, he gave contradictory accounts, sometimes claiming the experiment happened exactly as he described, other times suggesting it was a metaphor or a psychological test rather than a literal event. The most charitable interpretation is that Allende witnessed something real, perhaps degaussing equipment being tested or a radar experiment, and his imagination filled in the gaps, turning a mundane naval procedure into a science fiction scenario. The least charitable interpretation is that he invented the entire story for attention. Either way, his testimony is not reliable enough to support the extraordinary claims being made. Despite the lack of evidence, the Philadelphia experiment became embedded in popular culture. Books, movies, television shows, and documentaries have explored the legend, often treating it as if it might be true. The 1984 film, The Philadelphia Experiment, presented a dramatized version that influenced how people imagined the event. Sequels and remakes followed. The story became a template for other military conspiracy theories: secret experiments gone wrong, cover-ups, missing witnesses, and suppressed technology. It fits neatly into a worldview where governments hide revolutionary discoveries to maintain control. And because the story involves science fiction concepts, teleportation, time travel, invisibility, it appeals to people who love speculative ideas and distrust official narratives. Tesla's name, attached to the legend, gives it an air of genius and tragedy. He becomes the wise scientist who warned against hubris, whose death allowed reckless men to misuse his work. It is a compelling narrative, even if it is fiction. The Philadelphia experiment teaches us several important lessons about how myths form and spread. First, myths fill narrative gaps. The real history of World War II naval research is complex, technical, and often boring. The Philadelphia experiment provides a simple, dramatic story that feels more exciting than reality. Second, myths require just enough plausibility. Degaussing equipment, radar experiments, and classified projects were all real. The legend wraps around these kernels of truth, making it harder to dismiss entirely. Third, myths evolve over time. The original Allende letters were vague and strange. Later retellings added details, smoothed out inconsistencies, and connected the story to other conspiracy theories, including Tesla's supposed involvement. Fourth, debunking is difficult. Even when evidence is presented, ship logs, crew records, physics explanations, believers can always claim the records were falsified or the evidence was destroyed as part of the cover-up. The absence of proof becomes reinterpreted as proof of conspiracy. Finally, myths reveal what we want to believe. The Philadelphia experiment persists because people want to believe that revolutionary technology exists in secret, that governments hide world-changing discoveries, and that brilliant individuals like Tesla saw further than the rest of us, but were ignored or silenced. So, did the Philadelphia experiment happen? No credible evidence supports it. The USS Eldridge was not in Philadelphia when the experiment supposedly occurred. No crew members or witnesses have been verified. The physics described in the story is impossible with known science, and the only source for the tale is a single unreliable individual whose story changed over time. Did Nikola Tesla have anything to do with it? Almost certainly not. Tesla's work had nothing to do with military invisibility projects. He died 9 months before the alleged experiment, and there is no documentation linking him to any such research. The Philadelphia experiment is a myth, a compelling, enduring myth, but a myth nonetheless. It is built on wartime rumors, misunderstood technology, and the human desire for mystery. But the legend does tell us something real. It tells us how much people want to believe that the impossible might be hidden just beneath the surface. That somewhere, in a classified file or a forgotten warehouse, the rules of physics are waiting to be broken. Tesla did not build a time machine. The Navy did not teleport a destroyer. No sailors were fused into metal. What did happen is this. A story was told, and people believed it because it was more interesting than the truth. And maybe that is the real experiment, not in physics, but in how myths take hold of the human imagination and refuse to let go. If you want to explore more Tesla myths and the real science behind them, the next episode investigates his alleged rivalry with Albert Einstein and what they really thought of each other. Subscribe. Because the line between Tesla's genius and the legends built around him gets blurrier with every story.